I guess there's no other introduction except to say this is the man himself, Leonard McGurr, aka Futura2000.
Thank you, bro. And thank you, Bali, for having me back, Potato Head. All you guys, thank you so much. Been a few years I've been with you previously, my first time here, and we talked about a project that's going to come to light tonight. So I'm so excited. And yeah, as Rostarr mentioned, I think late night, when were you on Hope Street in Brooklyn? Like 95-ish?
1995, yeah. Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. So I had a studio down the block, which I thought I was being like really like how do you say?
That's like older than Supreme. That's like a quarter century. So
right. I thought I was being
just
like, like
guys,
really like ahead
old.
of the curve by moving to Williamsburg. But
no, you were on Hope Street. So I had a studio in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, on Hope Street, which was always a very positive location, right? The name, you were very optimistic before Obama. And I was like, I'm hoping this shit's going to work for me. It was actually the late 80s when I got on Hope. I was the benefactor of a lovely lady named Agnes B., right? Yes. Who doesn't love Agnes?
That's right.
So Agnes was not just a patron and a friend to me at that time, but offered me the unbelievable possibility that I guess is an artist's dream, which was use the French term, an atelier. So I got a studio, and it was on Hope Street in Brooklyn. And Agnes...
Was that because of Agnes?
Yeah, I mean, she was buying work through the, not trying to backdoor me like other individuals would always try to save money or circumvent the gallery system, whatever it may be. It could be totally low end, but still, people do that. She didn't. She was so straight up, and she made a deal with me, which was studio space at the time. That space when I got there, was $500 a month. So that's $6K annual.
Right.
Very doable, very cheap for old school Brooklyn. This is like 1988.
Right.
And
I was paying $1,800 for 4,000 square feet.
Okay, well, I had a deal.
That was later. Yeah.
We had a deal. That building was dope. It was like some real educated artists, right, from like proper schools that knew about like artists in residence, and they got a great deal in this space. Long story short, Agnes made me this deal. She said, at the end of the year, I'll come back, Lenny, and you offer me first right of refusal to buy work to compensate her for her $6,000 investment. So I was blown away because nobody acted like that. This is now the late 80s. Sean may have been... Jean and Keith are about to pass. So as it was anyway, the movement was on a downturn. And here was this woman coming from France and kind of being like, my Joan of Arc, like she just came to my rescue. And
right.
So, I've loved her ever since, and she's still supporting and, being on Yes.
Right, exactly. She's a great supporter of mine, and obviously I'm so thankful for her.
I think a lot of artists from our school and community are grateful that she's there because she just is always supporting artists, and it's a rarity in our story that people are sincere and they have the right, they have like a good heart.
Right, definitely. Was she one of the first people to bring you out to France?
Yeah, I mean, I have been through France in the early 80s, but by this time, like I say, our movement was already like passé, and people weren't feeling graffiti art, if you will, anymore. And I will say this is not yet even the advent of what street art became known to be. This is before you guys started barnstorming and right. So there wasn't yet even an answer to what was the graffiti movement of the 70s and 80s in New York. That would actually, in my opinion, occur in the new millennium. Like when you have everyone kind of arriving, or they're either on their way or they have arrived. And I credit higher names in our story, like like a Banksy, even, for example. I think he did a lot to elevate the story of what the graffiti movement represents.
Right.
It's a twisted Brit angle that's great because we don't think that way. Whether he's the pioneer stencils, well, that's a story you can have with Blake Lorette. There's a lot of arguments over the originality of everything, but respect, because even the astronomical numbers that you see and hear, well, I'm not jealous, I'm not offended, I'm simply living my own life in my own time, right? And I'm gonna find, if the ceiling is like way the fuck up there, well, there's a lot of room between the floor and the ceiling to find comfort, right?
Of course.
So it's not about aspirational, I got to be like dude, or look at someone like Brian Claus today, who I'm in like admiration of because of his kind of ability to surf that kind of territory where you're like, damn, is that your property? No, it isn't, but they're giving you permission to do, it's kind of genius in a way. It's like way beyond what Andy was trying to do.
Right, and so I know that you guys, you and Stash had brought Brian to Tokyo or had introduced him to Nigo.
Yeah, Brian is the second wave, right, of the arrival of all these American artists in Japan at that time, the Harajuku moment. But this is even leading up to the millennium. It's like 98, 99 now. We hit like 96. So even the 2-year advantage Stash and I had on everybody sort of figuring it out, or it wasn't so much that everyone figured it out. Everyone realized, from New York at least, we got to go to Tokyo. Because truth is, Tokyo did a lot for me in the mid-90s, late 90s, and not just with the Nigo Association and Harajuku and Junio Tech, like all these great people, the the clothiers, the W-Taps, the Takshins, like everyone.
Right. It was a big movement.
Nobu, Hysteric. It was so much shit happening there. And for us, we were foreigners, obviously. We're Gaijin, right? We're running around. We can't speak to you. Can't even say hello. So it was a learning curve, but a great one as an artist and / graphic artist even, because someone like Escape Thing, who's the kind of, one of the greatest
He's a genius.
Graphic designers of our generation. We all admire him so much. But watching someone work, whether it's watching an artist paint, he or she do what they do visually, like you see them, you see their hands, you see how they move when they do what they do. It's really fascinating. And watching this guy in 96, chain smoking with a really, I smoke cigarettes. I cannot stand a dirty ashtray. This dude does ashes, cigarettes all over the table.
All over his computer.
But he was key commands and shit I didn't even, levels I didn't even know about yet. And I was writing code and being online, right, in 96 and stuff. So I was already into computing, but not on some Japanese level.
Right. He's definitely way nerdy and out there. But
amazing.
You had a web, was it FUTURA2000.com?
It eventually was, but I would like to say that, I've been known, I'm known for being, he's the abstract guy, he's a this, he's a that. And yes, I did do certain things through my timeline, but I was really super proud of my website in 96 because, we're all going to be on IG later today, but people like Sammy and Splay that we had up and running, and my own concept of what the internet, if you will, was going to be, which is ultimately a sharing device where we can do our propaganda for the branding, whatever your whole spiel is. But the idea that any individual could do what I was doing, which is simply writing HTML and submitting imagery and GIFs and fucking sound effects, and it was so simple, yet no one had really done it, right?
And so we were ahead of the curve.
Well, it was writing
very early on in the.
It was my graffiti moment, if you will, right? Because it's nothing more than, and that's why I hated Facebook from the beginning. It's Tanagar wall. What are you kidding me? Come on, you're so unoriginal. So the concept. Or even please like me on Facebook. How fucking shallow is your life that you need to ask people to like you? It's
right.
The whole concept fucked me up. So I was like, okay, this is how you can do it. This isn't, I'm not a designer. I don't know shit about what I'm doing. I was simply, copy and pasting, right? It's my man said, look at someone's website, copy the source, change the color, matrix or helix, whatever that shit was, 6-digit, whatever, letter, alphanumeric shit. And put imagery and write text and tell stories. I used to interview myself and make it sound like it was some real posh academic person asking me stupid questions, right?
So just a backstory on his website. So it was like, what was it, like 96?
Yeah, it was 96. And
it was like a maze. You would go in.
It was
and
a labyrinth.
You would press a button, or maybe you have to press a few buttons.
You can experience it tonight on a site called the Wayback Machine. It actually still lives there.
Okay.
I mean, it's corny now because, you know, it's quite late.
No, but if you think about that.
But it was really cool
Was
at
like
the time.
you would be sucked in for hours just...
And
it'll
kids
take you
were,
from one
because
place to another.
the modem, you know, you guys all remember modems and dial-ups and all, and it's that era really, the dawn of it all. And in the early 90s, after a failed clothing company effort I did with some friends, I was like, damn, man, I gotta learn all this computing shit, but computers were so expensive. So I took a job at Kinko's, right there in University
What
Place.
year was that?
That's like 94. So Kinko's was offering users, patrons. Yeah, no. People that come in to buy your shit, whatever. What do you call it? Customers.
Right.
Thank you. Yeah.
And color copies.
I hate that word.
Color copies were like
Customers.
$20 for like 1 8x10 or something like that.
Yeah,
right?
but you know, the idea that they were renting computing time for people, they call it like desktop publishing, right? That was our big pitch. Like, hey, come on, use our computer. You can use Microsoft Word, you know, all this kind of stuff. And that's when I got turned on to Apple and Adobe and all this shit. And I was like, this is really interesting. And so I worked color copies at night at Kinko's. And because it's like, used to work midnight shifts, graveyard. I love that shift. And so I was working graveyard at Kinko's, had a ton of copying to do, but I'm a go-getter. So I do the whole shit in like 10 minutes. And then I got like 9 hours and 50, whatever, like the whole time off. And I would just practice on computing. I learned about Photoshop, although I was more drawn to Illustrator, and I still am more of like an AI guy than a JPEG guy. But just to say, I really wrapped up in computing, and people were talking about the internet coming online in the next year, and I was like, oh shit, what's that? But the thing about my site at the time that I think I appreciated and I benefited from was that most of the people who had computing at that time weren't kids at home like, today, but were students in schools. So most of the URLs and whatever the numbers of the kids that were, their IP addresses or whatever were all EDUs, a lot of EDUs. And I was like, yeah, that's really cool. Like kids in school are getting access to this because basically they're the ones who have the tech in their hands at the time. So as a result, occasionally I run into people that are like, oh shit, Lenny, your website, man, that really made me think about the online. Because I was really advocating people doing what I was doing. What I was doing only took time. It was tedious. I had to do a lot of, computing, if you will.
But you love tinkering.
I do.
Yes.
I do.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're like the supreme knoller and tinkerer, I think.
Well, I get, it's funny, like we're up here and you guys are talking to me and, we're both creative people and I'm celebrated for being Futura and I totally appreciate it. I mean, it's a great job, but I don't live as, my life, like when I leave you guys tonight or whenever, I'm not going to just run around and always, I'm not always Futura, okay? And so I think part of the thing I enjoy really is I don't want to make a joke about all the deep shit we're doing here, but the duality, right? The kind of Bruce Wayne Batman effect I'm able to have because, quite frankly, I prefer being Lenny McGurr, right? I prefer just being me without you judging me because, oh shit, that's Futura.
Right.
So if I had an opportunity to more be me in my life, I want to do that. So I have to get off the grid and not do Futura shit, so case in point, I did a wonderful trip 10 years ago, which I thought was a real great adventure in not being me, which was I went around to all these baseball stadiums in America because I like baseball. And it was kind of a lifelong dream. I don't know if I did that, Ro?
That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I did this major thing over 2 years where I went to all these stadiums, but the joy of that experience not just was the completion and accomplishment of doing that whole ambitious task, but not under the guise of me being me. It was just me being Lenny. And
you love baseball.
Lenny, the baseball guy. And I think 2 times in 32 stadiums, somebody came up and was like, yo, oh shit, Futura. It was like in Houston, Texas, and fucking Oakland, California. So seemingly places, yeah, you might know me. Cool Spanish kid, by the way, in Houston. We're actually still in touch. He sent me a photo that he took then, like a quick, hey, can I get a selfie? It was, people call it selfies back then. Hey, can I get a selfie? And then he sent me one or whatever, like some years later. Or no, I met him at something. And after that event, he sent me the photo. He sent me like the 2 photos. It's, pretty cool. And so that's the thing. Like
Lenny happens to be one of the most humble and giving people, and it's like when people go up to him, they are starstruck. But I mean, he's always so eloquent and has been very giving with his time and knowledge. And
it would be unconscionable for me to be honestly, like that other guy, that I see a lot in other people, right? Who carry themselves a certain way, and I'm like, wow. First of all, the fact is, I'm so grateful that my life, that everything's turned out great. I have my health, obviously. I'm getting older. I can't avoid that, but I'm feeling younger, not just by the energy I feel like I still have, but you're right. I'm getting a lot of response from a younger audience right now, which is encouraging. Because I think whether it's someone, as you mentioned, rest in peace, Virgil Abloh, we could all deeply understand the loss. But just to say, someone like he or people like that who are already super successful in doing what they do and don't really got to fuck with me at all, yet pay the respect to me to fuck with me, and yet in doing so, introduce me to a new community who I see a lot now, young bucks, whatever, young lady, whoever, women, them, they, whoever, all of you, being really like aware and like, wow, Futura, and it's kind of like younger people obviously who maybe didn't know, my body of work but
are rediscovering, or if they thought, oh, maybe you were like doing something different and now you're doing this, but you tend to, I think, I kind of always say this about you, like you're having like your 3rd or 4th wave, because
thank you.
He's been around for so long, and at the very beginning of not just graffiti, but when graffiti turned into the art gallery scene, and like with like, you showed with like, it was at Stefan Eins, like at Fashion Moda.
That was 42 years ago, 1980, which, oh, by the way, not the recipient of this information, although kind of it rubs off on me in a good way, but a painting from that exhibition. There's an exhibition in a very alternative space in the South Bronx in 1980.
At 47th Street?
And 3rd Avenue.
Right.
And it was run by a Austrian guy named Stefan Eins, and another gentleman from the city, Joe Lewis. They were kind of curating and doing shows, but GAS, Graffiti Art Success.
Yes, right.
Curated by Crash, Johnny Crash Matos. And it was the lineup of the time, myself, Lee Quinones, Crash, Days.
Ramelzi?
Ramelzi, no, not yet.
Okay.
Maybe not even Don D. Lady Pink was in that show, John Fechner. A great list of artists. All of the graffiti work, if you will, was done on plywood, a 4-foot by 8-foot sheet of plywood. Recently, Christie's, within a month, that shit sold for $250,000 USD. Now, that's fucking crazy, but thank you, because at least the value of my work has been established on a historical level. I'm not making loot like that for current work, and that's ironic. But then again, yes, I mean, I get it. I'm not vintage yet, but I ain't going to be around that long. So, I bet on the future. This is the future's bet right here.
Yeah.
No pun intended. But no, just to say that those kind of things are wonderful. And, whatever the deal was 42 years ago, I could care less, right? Because I've said many times, it's like, I'm fortunate that, I'm doing well as an artist, and there's a kind of a number there. I choose not to say it, or I don't even want to look at it, but that number is there. But at the same time, like, I'd rather do a fresco for you than a painting. That's that whole French Dispatch shit, which I thought was genius. It's like, it's a fresco. So the idea that, if you're in New York City anytime soon, I've done a fresco. at the Supreme store, back to Supreme. And the whole great thing about that is, like I said to James, the owner, and he knows me for 25 years, predates Supreme.
Since Union days.
Since Union days, early 90s.
Or when he was actually selling T-shirts at the parking lot of Tower Records.
Whatever the case may be. Yeah.
That's early, humble beginnings.
Very humble. And look at those numbers now. Jesus.
But he was selling your T-shirts back
in the
90s. Like
that's right.
Late 80s, 90s.
But cut to 5-6 years ago when they relocated in New York, he said, hey, Fuge, Futura is like a Brit way. They've always called me Fuge. Hey, Fuge, we would love to get a new painting or something. And I was like, yeah, are you into me actually just painting right up on the wall? He's like, yeah, that's fucking brilliant. So right there, it's like in an Agnes B class, right? Of where you're not trying to leverage proper, like ownership of a thing. Mm-hmm. You're willing to have me do what I do on the wall. And you know what? No one really owns it. And at the end of the day, whitewash the shit and let's keep moving. And that's really the spirit of my origin. I mean, how could I now, because I have the ability, leverage all that shit for economic value? Like, yeah, that's the obvious, but it's not the motivation. You know what I mean? I don't get comfort in that. It actually it makes me uncomfortable. Friends of mine want to buy the work. It's like, God damn. Why you want to buy them? Why you want to buy the work? I'm going to work it out, though. God forbid. I mean, the world is so fucking serendipitous and wonderful. I'm on my way here. I'm in Doha on a connecting flight from New York. My wife is there. Sky's there. We're hanging out. I got my back. They see what's going on. I don't even see what's going on. Someone comes behind me in a fucking Doha lounge and puts their hands over my eyes, like, hey, what's going on? Cool to see you here. Like some, the normal shit where you sneak up on your boy. I have no fucking idea who it is. I'm like, okay, keep talking. I kind of hear a Brit accent. I try to grab the hands. He turns around. It's fucking Goldie.
Yeah.
Okay, I haven't seen Goldie. He remembered. He's like, no, 2000 is 20 years, bro. I was in Brooklyn, right? So I'm like, damn you. And then we go off and we have a cigarette. And then he says to me, come on, man, I got to get, I love you, bro. And I'm a big fan. I got to get some work. I'm like, God damn it, Goldie. Fuck, you got to get some work. I said, okay, we'll work out a charitable thing, right? Because I think that's the way I have to approach it now, where it's like, I don't want to take money from my friends.
That's it's always hard.
Yeah, I want to share. Or in the case, in the worst case scenario, and it's not worst case scenario, let's say best case scenario, let's swap a painting. How about that? Right? Then that way, even if you're getting value added, that's not the issue. It's two of us, we're boys, we're homies, and let's just share our work. And you're going to wind up giving it to the kids anyway, right? So, it's all in good hands in that sense. So I think amongst artists or amongst thieves, whatever, it's better to do it that way. Because I do not like taking money from my friends. It's just, it
obviously feels a little weird. It's like selling a painting to your family member. It's like, I don't think that's going to happen.
Well, it's like, it's like the kids said when looking for girls, it's like, there's a lot of fish in the sea, right? So I would always think that, well, I don't need to take money from, people I love because it makes me feel bad. Push comes to shove, I'll just give you this shit, please. And then don't make it uncomfortable. This is always levels, right? But I would rather, God, to got a wall or you want me to, that's kind of the approach too, I think, to public art that I don't want to lose focus of. Okay, I know we're having this wonderful conversation, but I'm really here for this other thing.
Yes. So, of course...
Do we want to talk about it?
So we can talk about the sculpture a little bit.
Okay.
So, okay. No, but this is
stay on topic.
This is how it should be, and I don't think it should be as rigid, and I'm not...
No. We're just having a conversation. We were relating the last time, we were talking about some whack-ass gallery we were associated with in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah. Right.
But
war stories, but we're not going to talk about war stories.
No, was it Abu Dhabi? No, it was Dubai. It was Dubai. My bad.
Right.
Yeah, it was all this Middle East stuff going on. But yes.
Yeah, and I'm sure you've been through many war stories over the years, but we're not going to talk about that.
No, we're not.
Because that's not worth our time. But the thing is, like, I heard about Lenny was going to make a sculpture out here like 3 years ago before I moved out here. And I was like, wow, that's going to be so dope. I'm like, so in my mind, I was already like, what is he going to make? Because I heard that he was going to make it out of recycled plastic or maybe garbage or, recycled trash, something. I wasn't sure. So in my mind, I was brewing up these ideas of what he was going to possibly do, for 3 years since COVID happened after that. So, and then I got to see that it was made. So how do you feel about the sculpture? Are you happy with the way it turned out? Is it what you would imagined in the beginning, or obviously it transformed into this?
It's its own thing, and it's way beyond even the scale, obviously. I mean, this is the biggest piece I've ever been associated with, and it's weird because I really got to shout out Sungai Watch and all the individuals responsible.
Like Russick.
I know a lot of people touch this shit and will continue to do so over the course of its life here at Desa Potato Head. But just to say, my figure that I'm most known for in that kind of world, the Pointman, came to life when we came out here back in 19 and saw what was going on here in the effort that they're making locally with sustainability and upcycle and recycle and make use of waste. And all of what I saw, whether it was the flip-flop, the mound of flip-flops, or it was all of the
recycled cabinetry,
all of it. And not to say like that didn't ring any bells. I mean, I was laughing when I was a kid in the 60s. Ecology was like a big thing, right? Where you have hippies coming out of that movement talking about sustainable this and solar that. And, people were like, you're bugging. And so just to say, it's not new. Right. But it's wonderful to see people really proactively trying to deal with, however small. And, we're doing our part back home as best we can. I mean, we're not Japanese. We don't have 6 boxes of shit, but we have a few different boxes that we put waste in. And we're conscious.
It's gotten better over the years.
I'm just saying, like, those guys, everybody goes to a level. I could go to that level, but I'm not comfortable there, right? So let me be at the level that I'm comfortable with, and I can actually help you, right? I can make my contribution. And then hopefully what I do might inspire somebody else. It happened in another field. Maybe it'll happen there. So my thing is we had to do something like that, and we're fortunate that simultaneous to what's going to happen here tonight, the reveal of this guy, we have another piece that they all, the artisans, let's just call them that, they fabricated another great piece that's in the design center in Singapore.
Which is amazing.
And that's made out of like 14,300
plastic bags. Yeah.
And there's a whole black-white dizzle dazzle effect going on with that. It's almost a camo-like and referential actually to, we spoke about it earlier, the dazzle camouflage of World War I, which was used in the nautical, game battleships.
Camouflage
ships. It's kind of like a zebra on the Savannah ship, because believe it or not, that's some natural shit that helps them hide. Survive, yeah. Although they're sticking out. I mean, I've been on a couple of those missions in Africa, and I seen them, and I was like so bored seeing zebras. I was like, another zebra. It's like they're all over the place. But as are the wildebeest, look for some of the exotic ones. It's hard, but and you got like lions and shit hanging out. My name's Leonard, by the way. I love lions. But just to say, it's so fantastic, man, to see this thing and the process. When we were here before, Potato Head here is already known for these fabrication. They had a design show back then where they're making the furniture and the processes of like heat press, mushy. It's like a mushy game with all the elements and stuff. It's really crazy, and like I can see where it's fascinating to really turn all this waste into something cool, whether it's a table or, I don't know if that's a 12 meters, it's like a 10 meter-ish statue out there.
I think it's 6 meter, something like that.
Okay,
right?
I'll take 6 meters. And that's still 18 feet in my country.
Huge.
Yeah, that's pretty damn big. And I'm so stupid. I am so stupid, guys. You don't know, but you're getting actually. I prefer this because you're getting a little more of the real me, which that's what I was trying to. It's like, hey, I'm real. I'm real, yo.
He is the real thing. So can I ask you about the Pointman? Obviously, the Pointman has been your character for quite a long time and has evolved over the years.
Yep.
So when did the Pointman become the Pointman kind of that it is now? Was that in the 90s or the 80s?
I will credit the whole Mo Wax Uncle moment in mid 90s, right around the same time I invaded Japan. 94, 95. Right. Finally met James in 92.
Right.
So that relationship was
you
up
met him
running.
in 92. Did you meet Nigo at the same time?
No,
I
met Nigo in 95. Nigo says 95. Yeah, I think I met Nigo in 95. Right. But I had met James, and it's actually on a trip to Japan with James and that whole kind of musical troupe where I got a chance to meet Skate Thing. The funny thing was I met Skate Thing. The Mo Wax tour was touring Japan, Osaka, Fukuoka, Sapporo, whatever, cities around Japan. I got left behind, right? So major oversight. I got left behind because, there wasn't budget for me. This is 95.
Right.
So I'm hanging out, walking Tokyo from Shinjuku to Shibuya and then Shibuya to Harajuku. I was like doing what a New Yorker does. They walk. And I was checking it, and every corner, every food mart, every mushy Genki, everything was fucking new. And I was just like, oh my God, oh shit. And I was just loving it. And all of a sudden I see Skate Thing, who was like, hey, hello. And I didn't know it's Skate Thing. And he's wearing a GFS hat. That's my failed company from the early 90s. Not really. I mean, we made a little moment.
Which means Gerb,
Futura, and Stash. GFS.
Right. And that's where Philly's Blunt T-shirt. That was the one. So that was one of the first kind of logo bite T-shirts.
Big time.
That really sparked off this kind of logo biting graphics scene in not only Tokyo but around the world. And I think that was it
was a forerunner.
Was that 92?
That was 92. Yeah.
Right.
But the GFS logo was the graphic balls from our subway system, the round colored, the G train, the F train, the S train. And so coming from graffiti school, we were using that symbolism to quasi-represent our history. Pretty classic and actually looking back a little bit corny, but hey, we're looking for identity and we could claim it, at least, right? We're not appropriating some shit that wasn't ours. So it
wasn't just stealing the Krylon logo.
Exactly.
Yes, it was life.
We did that, but cut to 95, Harajuku, here's this guy waving at me, Skate Thing, with a GFS hat, but re-fucked with. He did something to it, and it was fluffy shit coming out of the top. And it was him touching stuff, right? Where whatever the item was, it was dope, but it could be doper. Let me fuck with it. Another thing about Skate Thing, when I met him, he had a sewing machine. Here's his computer, and there's his sewing machine. And he's making a ghillie suit. I don't know if you know what a ghillie suit is, but it's what snipers wear in the military, that crazy ass fucking suit with all the...
You can just fall into the grass and you don't see...
It's just, but to make one, I mean, come on, really? And so that's what I'm saying about the levels. And right there, that whole photograph in my mind of what I saw, I assimilate, I facsimile that shit. I went back to New York. And that's when we started Project Dragon.
Right.
And I had my bunker on 27th Street.
Like an army bunker, basically.
It was crazy. I had camouflage material that I just wrapped, I wallpapered my room in camouflage. And then I painted everything green. I had all my Macs painted green. It was really a great office. And so I was fully kind of copying them because I was like, man, I can't take it to Skate Thing's level, but all of us are so far behind. If I just excel, if I just step on the gas a little bit, I'll leave everybody behind, right? And that's ultimately I felt in the coming out of the 90s into the new millennium. And sadly, oh God, there's FUTURA2000. It's 1999. Shout out to Prince. And I was just how boring and corny am I that I lived to see this number arrive? Because in 1970, when I was 15, 2000 was 30 years away. I was going to be 45? And I was. But I'm not going to live, when I'm 15, I'm not ever going to live to be 45.
You don't
right?
think about that.
So
far, yeah.
as 2000 approached, I was like, oops, okay, I kind of predated my shit. And Andre, he was already there, so I guess I couldn't be 3000. But just to say, you guys got that, right? I said that before, no one laughed. Thank you. No, just to say that, it was crazy arriving in the new millennium. Y2K. Remember Y2K? They were afraid that like all the computers were going to reset and shit. And wow, what a scam, right? But just to say, surviving all that, and then then that's when I like, I'm not Futura 2000. Of course you're not. You're dead. I was like, I'm Futura, and then that was comfortable. Even though I stole that from the typeface, the car, the blender, right. Sewing machine. Nothing original about the name Futura. But the alphanumeric, if you will, the combination of the year 2000, which was a projection in my mind, but which is also a direct bite of 2001: A Space Odyssey,
right.
Which in 1968, when I was, 13, that movie kind of blew my mind, because I was like, damn, like we're already circling the Earth and trying to go to the moon, and we would a year later. But that whole era of being a 13, 14, 15-year-old, you gotta admit, man, wow, what a cool time to be that age. And not for nothing, it was. And here's the end result, some weird-ass 67-year-old.
But your love for science fiction and like...
Oh, it never ends.
Cartoons.
And it predates Arthur C. Clarke, and it predates Kubrick. Because I'm come from that post-war atomic threat. Oh, look what happens when the bugs get it, they suck the radiation and shit and they become giant creatures.
Right.
The whole Godzilla story, right? It's born out of that, right? It's born out of this nuclear thing or something triggered, blah, blah, blah. So just to say, I've been a fantasy of all of those sort of influences. And I try to, because I came up with a cool name unbeknownst to me, I outdated myself, yet I tried to stay current. Like even in the year 2000, my website's still up and running. People are just kind of getting turned on to it. And by now, more people are having access to computing. That computer, what did I have? It was like a Mac. They called it the Bronze. It was a beautiful black Mac PowerBook. First gen of those. And like I wrote all my shit on that. I wrote everything in Notepad, basically. I used to love Notepad. And now, what is the Apple app? Like Notes?
Right.
Right? I live in that shit. Yeah. Because you get an idea and, we don't carry pen and paper anymore. So you got notes. Like, oh my God, copy that shit. So just when you're on some flow shit or you just think you come up with something cool, jot it down. Just, or be cool and carry a book and like a pen and write shit. That's even cooler.
So... your work has always been like, even though you come from the graffiti world or during that seminal era, in the 70s and 80s, your work was always different. It was about like abstraction, not fractals, but like, like nucleuses and
Sure.
I really always loved that about your work, that it wasn't just about you writing your name. It was about feeling. It was like more like looking at jazz or something visually, So I really always appreciated your work, and it was a standout among all other like kind of like your friends that were doing graffiti at the time.
Yeah, some of the giants, the Lee Quinoneses, the Dondis, the Zephs, the Scenes, the Quicks, the Crashes, the Dazes. There were so many artists on trains in the 70s, obviously, that laid all that groundwork visually. But I must say, I think that the benefit of all of our culture is really comes down to the documentation of it, right? Like the Martha Coopers and the Henry Chalfonts of the world. Because without their love and devotion to our, community, and really they befriended all of us, and I think it's a remarkable kind of exchange amongst, the creatives and the people who are there to kind of capture the history of it all. Because yes, I'm widely known for some abstract car I painted 42 years ago.
The breakthrough.
Right before graffiti art success, right? The gas show we mentioned with Crash in Fashion Moda. Just before I painted that piece of plywood that sold for $250,000, I went and painted the brake train. which is this abstract car, full subway wagon, if you will, which was the gold standard for artists of that moment who really were trying to do something, whether it's Lee's whole car masterpieces, Fat Five Freddy's, soup cans, scenes, just abstractions of like popular characters we know in cartoons, Knox, otherworldly kind of Star Wars car of 1980. Just great art on trains, free as fuck, didn't cost the public a dime. I mean, yeah, maybe they were inconvenienced by, paint on the window. Oops, I'm sorry. But it's like what we were able to do for nothing. Right now, I'm going to have a talk with management. Like, how do we speak to the Mass Transit Authority, which is the subway system of New York City? And how do I pay for a commercial wrap of one of those cars? Because they're selling that shit. There's a price to that. And rather than selling a whack-ass product or some commodity none of us need, pay for my own advertising to do an abstract painting that runs around the city of New York. Because that's really the thing about graffiti on trains in its moment. It wasn't about, it was about, yo, look at my shit, that's me. But it was also about, imagine the concept of art moving around a major city in the world 24/7. The shit doesn't close at midnight like some systems around the world. These guys are running nonstop. Yeah, truncated schedules over, the weekends and late night. I get it, but the trains are still running. So it's conceivable that you could have a train like the 2s and 5s of New York City that we loved as graffiti writers because they went through Brooklyn, Manhattan, and the Bronx. You got like a long line of visibility. And it's a two-way street. They got to go down and then they got to come back. And they do that shit every
But it was a big feat to do that, like a complete car. I mean, you were risking your life, getting thrown in jail.
I think I did the break train in less than 4 hours. So it's also like if you can imagine painting under pressure. I mean, obviously it's illegal, but just to say I don't, I wonder how could I pull that off. But back to Henry and Martha specifically because she took the photograph. So if Martha doesn't come that next morning and run the system, knowing what train I painted, knowing where to be.
So she knew ahead of time.
Well, we told her we were going out to paint. Because Dondi would always tell her, hey, I got a train running. It's done in such and such a yard. It's painted on the east or west side of the train, whatever side you determine. But it doesn't really matter because where she would post up in the Bronx or wherever to catch it elevated, as it comes out from below ground. And now you got that wonderful shot. Back to the Serengeti or the Savannah, like that's just like a fucking jaguar in nature running through the jungle, right?
Right.
So for her to capture it on film is a spectacular feat. And of course, I profit in a way psychologically because people see that and they're like, oh shit, he did that. Mm-hmm. Now, if there's no photograph, it's the proverbial fucking tree in a forest kind of thing, right?
Right, gets tagged up or whatever.
Or just like, what break train? What abstract? You see what I'm saying? It never happened.
Right.
So how grateful am I that we had such a connection with these documentarians who till this day, I mean, Martha Cooper's in her 70s, she's 10 years, 75. Henry is in his young 80s. And Martha was just in the DRC. Okay, that's not like some street in New York. That's like Democratic Republic of Congo. She's hanging out with artists there painting. So that's really, admirable, I think, and
so much respect to.
And I love her too. Like, maybe more than I love Agnes. I'm sorry, Agnes, but just to say I do love Martha as well. And, it's great that you have these people who are able to help you tell your story. I mean, I guess, like I said, if she didn't do it, who would be crediting me as such? And in the reboot 25-year edition of Subway Art, the big boy, like not the little original, it's a double-page spread. So that's a kind of historical publication. It's like really in there. And I'm
documenting is obviously very important, no matter what you do, but especially if you do graffiti or street art, it's like it could be gone like the next morning, or who knows, or it rains and then
you anticipate it certainly could be gone, or rather than even gone, what about gone over? That's
exactly
even, that's not so nice.
Hating on you. I'm sure there was a lot of war between or beefs between you and other writers or different crews, right?
Honestly,
maybe not with you.
Honestly, Ron, not really with me. I mean, I'm not like gonna go over someone or whatever the case would be, and it all starts with something like that. But no, I mean, I think we grew out of that. Fashion Motive was, I think, back to that show. That was the elevator. We all felt somewhat elevated, right, from what we were doing to being above ground. And that was an important transition. Although, like I said, I mean, I think the 80s kind of crashed and burned for the graph.
So after that, Stefan, they put a show together. It was the Times Square show.
Yeah,
they were involved in the Times Square show, which was very important.
That's actually before Gas.
Oh, is that?
Yeah, that's summer of 80.
Okay.
And I was only, an observer. I wasn't physically in the Times Square show. It would be the next year.
Which was in PS1, New York New Wave.
New York New Wave, yes.
PS1.
1981. And that was a breakout show. That's the show that Jean-Michel was kind of discovered.
Right.
If you will. Because that was a show curated by a guy named Diego Cortez, and rest in peace. And Diego had, over 120 different artists from what was now this emerging downtown artist community that Keith was very much a part of, obviously, Kenny, but many, many artists in that show.
And so
some not here today, sadly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so, I mean, you obviously were good friends with Keith, and you were also friends with Jean-Michel as well. I mean, I'm sure it was a very small scene, even though there was a lot of interesting people back in the 80s. But I mean, you obviously had done paintings. I don't know about doing paintings together, but you definitely traveled in the same crowds, and clubs and what have you, right?
We did, yeah. I mean, we were always very proud of Jean because, he's like the first one of us to really rise up and begin to be collected and ultimately, of course, to the top. I think the breakout show was him and Andy, obviously. That was the show that really, kind of broke everything open for him as far as the possibility.
Right. I mean, it wasn't well received by critics, but
it wasn't at the time.
My favorite shows or bodies of work between the two of them ever.
I mean, I participated in the diaries that they produced as the Warhol Diaries, some kind of a doco. I remember a little small moment in that, but I remember that show wasn't well received, and there was a moment where Jean thought he was being exploited. It was a weird moment.
Yeah, being used by Andy. Right, exactly.
But at the same time, doors were opening for potential sales of his work, and different dealers who were gravitating around representing him. But I remember the beginnings. Ro, remember those kind of studios down in Soho where you could open up a couple of kind of gates and go down into a basement right below the street level.
Right.
And that was
blocks you could see.
Yeah, you could see the glass block windows, or, like I say, you just have these two gates, rectangular, you go down that stairway and it'd be a little lower. They're kind of like it was
below ground.
And they had Jean up in there at one point, I remember, just banging out drawings and work. And, I remember thinking wow, are they taking advantage of him, or is he taking advantage of them? It's and then I had mentioned recently, Jean was telling me early days, the gallery needs the artist. The artist don't need the gallery. And then at one point I was like, well, that's easy for you, because he was really he was doing really well. And, no one in his circle was doing, let's say, as well or anywhere close to as well. Because also when the door opened up to the fine art, consumers or whatever they were really trying to sell, if you will, in Soho, we weren't part of that. You know what I mean? It was sort of like another tier of buyers.
I see.
Yeah. And at the time I was a little bitter, but also, I was looking at my son who was just an infant and shit. And I'm like, well, I can't this whole thing is not sustainable, back to our sculpture. But just to say that, it wasn't.
Right. And so, I mean, we won't talk about that too much longer, but so back then when Keith Haring and Basquiat passed away, I heard like there was a lot of like backlash from like the galleries were like, okay, graffiti is dead. That's over with. And you actually were like, didn't care about showing, or you weren't interested in showing with galleries anymore?
Well, like I said, I had cut myself off for a minute. I was actually a messenger. I mean, I remember when my son was a young kid, that was like my first real job. I had previously worked, obviously, but, that was like when I'm on the street working, and I'm like, was looking at like, I'm talking about paying $500 a month rent, right, at the studio that I'm not paying yet. I don't have that studio yet, but just to say that kind of a number on a rent. I think if I'm paying $500 rent for the studio, maybe my house rent might have been $1,000, right? So now I'm actually paying $1,500 a month rent, right? Luckily, Agnes's investment is offsetting that expense, but I still got to pay my rent. So $1,000 a month rent, I need $1,000 a week. That's how I used to calculate, right? Like, I need to make my rent in a week. So how can I do that? And my boy was like, well, you can make $200 a day on a bicycle. I'm like, well, fuck that. Where? How? And I started being a messenger, and I could make $400 a day on a bike. So that was a lucrative kind of thing, with the caveat that I was a quote unquote independent contractor. Therefore, I had no medical, and really I had no rights as an employee. They could cut me loose at any time.
Or if you got injured, that's it.
Well, that's ultimately what happened. And what happened next? I took a job at the post office right across the street from PS1. So this is 1987, 1988. I'm working at the post office across the street from PS1, that wonderful show back in 81, where even I was coming out, as this cool young artist, following the break train, all this like, oh, he's an abstract guy and he's Kandinsky. I didn't know who fucking Kandinsky was, but I didn't care. They were like referencing me to real art. So I was just rolling with it. But yet, I have no opportunity. I'm working at the post office. Here comes Agnes B, saved my ass in 88. Ricky Powell, rest in peace, another photographer from our culture. He passed some few years ago, the Rickster. He took a great photo of me after the opening of that show that Agnes bought work. Madonna, Sandra Bernhardt, Jennifer Grey, me in a starter jacket, American baseball team, I love baseball, the Orioles, and some cool cycling glasses. Gets published in the Daily News. Artist opening, young, celebrities, blah, blah, blah. Next day, some employee at the post office is like, yo, Lenny, that's you, right? I'm like, no, that's not me. Because I'm trying to still blow up my spot. And plus they're like fucking postal workers and shit, right? I don't know what's going on, what the guy's gonna do. So that's before going postal. Well, actually what happened was people went postal and they became a thing. But postal employees, stand back. So I was basically blown up by the ears. Like, so a couple of days later he comes back, he's like, because deny, right? That's your first action, deny. And no, not really. Cop to it. If you fucked up, cop to it. But not that. I was like, no, that's not me. And then he said, a couple of days later, he came back. He's like, yo, I seen you wear that jacket. He still had the news. I think he liked Madonna. He's like, yo, I seen you wear that jacket and those glasses. So I was like, all right, dude, Miguel, whoever's Spanish kid. I was like, yo, just keep it on the low. Don't tell everybody. And then a few days later, I fucking left. So that was actually, it was a blessing, that I had that moment. And then, the Agnes moment really. And back to Agnes, the beginning of the conversation, she kind of saved my ass, or at least put me on a track where I didn't have to be working, a kind of classic job. And, I worked night shift at the post office. Okay, go ahead.
And so I remember her telling me about how she was working with you and helping you. And I remember she was saying that because you had just had your 2 children and then she loves children. So she was just like, I'm going to look out for Lenny because, he's got these two beautiful kids.
Yeah, by then I actually did have two kids, damn it, yeah.
Right, and so it was very important for her to look out for you. And obviously, you know, having children, it changes your life. You know, after I had my two kids, like shortly after, I realized, you know, living in New York was not really the place I wanted to be if I wanted to raise them properly. And so, you know, artists are like all or nothing type people. In my mind, I'm like that, and I'm pretty sure you were like that too. So it must have been a very interesting time, like when you were going through the transition of like graffiti art, like not doing that anymore, and then raising your children. There's a lot of stress involved, but you know, how did you cope during that time? It must have been difficult, but you had to.
I mean, you know, I would never, you know, project my difficulties on, you know, whatever I was dealing with at the time, right? Because it's like, well, it's my burden. But yeah, it was rough, and you know, I was grateful when there were kind of moments of good times and stuff, and you know, wasn't as stressed. But yeah, truth be told, I don't think I was actually financially ready. You know, I know I wasn't, but that was maybe my only fault, because I think I brought that, you know, being a parent and caring for my children. Obviously, you know, it's like my priority, and I said that, you know. That's my best work, and it was a fantastic collaboration.
They're incredible. Yeah, both of them
Thank you.
amazing.
Thank you.
So talented.
Yeah, I'm very happy, you know, obviously, and that's also helps me, you know, where I'm at now, not having to deal with something like that. And like I said, I mean, we're lucky. I don't know, I guess the genetics are really good. We've all been very healthy, and I pray, you know, that we can, you know, just keep it going.
Definitely, most definitely. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Do we have time for a couple questions from the audience?
Anybody brave enough to kick it?
Would anybody like to ask Leonard any questions? Anybody in the audience? Okay, hold on a second.
Hi, Lenny. So basically, you're my inspiration for being a graffiti artist for 40 years now.
And where are you from, sir?
Just outside London, but I live here now. And
okay.
Basically, I'm big into hip hop, and that's how I got into graffiti, because I got exported. 82, you know, that whole scene came over.
Yes.
And basically, are you into hip hop or are you into rock? Because they say the graffiti artists in the 70s were all into heavy metal, and I'm like, come on, you got to be into funk and soul as well.
Well, I grew up on, you know, Motown. You know, my mom was really into, you know, the black sound. My mom was black. So my name is McGurr, which is my dad's. My dad was actually not my biological dad. He's a wonderful guy. He's no longer here. Irish Catholic from Jersey, and my mom was a black lady from Chicago. So I grew up in the house with my mom. My mom was like a housewife. She never really left the house, and I've grown up to realize like this interracial couple that raised me was quite unique in how they were going about their lives at that time. You know, it's very progressive, I think, for them to have done that. But love R&B, love Smokey, love anything coming out of Motown, for sure. The Supreme, you know, all that shit. And then, you know, whatever would come elsewhere, and Smokey and all that stuff. But I did like rock, too, and I must admit, you know, the Beatles' arrival, I was just a kid, but I thought that shit was pretty cool. And I love Led Zepp. I love Jimmy. I do love rock, you know, so I'm a rock guy. And I love all the early 80s, as corny as some of those lyrics were. I would have to say Wu-Tang's my shit, as far as if I'm going to define, you know, a New York rap sound, I want to align myself with that moment in the 90s when they came to be. But now it's sort of all too commercial. Love Jay, you know, like, love everybody, I guess, but I'm just not as into music anymore. That's the problem, really. Thank you, though. What did you write? Hang on. What did you write? Mac. Oh, Mach. M-A-C-H. Mac. So did the Brits say Mac? They do. Yeah, okay. Sorry about that. I know. I mean, we say Mach, but I got it. Mac. Mac. And what do you say? Aluminium? The what? Jesus. Okay.
Another question from anybody? Who would like to ask? Okay.
That's like a Vegemite thing, right? Marmite. Yeah, one of them. Just keep the mics out.
So, Lenny, I actually caught you on the Dithers series.
The Dithers.
Yeah, it was like a series of videos.
It's like an interview.
It was an interview.
Video.
Yep.
Like in my studio, in one of my office spaces.
Yeah. And
I'm like
you were showing
rambling.
all your.
I'm rambling in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were showing all of your collections,
All my stuff.
remotes, and all the
Yeah.
stuff that you.
Oh yeah, I remember that. All the remote control, like Sony Plaza, maybe, right? Is that what it was? Yeah.
So I guess my question is, what are you into right now, and are you still collecting?
Nah, not really. I mean, I unearthed my Star Wars collection recently, which I was kind of happy to get it all out of boxes and have a look at it.
Cool.
Back in the late 90s, I had my own, like in this house we lived in, I had like a room. It was like my version of a Japanese toy store. I was like super small, but packed as fuck with like blister cards everywhere. And it was really good. I called it Variant. So I kind of recreated Variant now in a little like Star Wars exclusive way. It's really cool. It's like in my studio space. But I'm into Lego again. I was into Lego for many years. I kind of jumped back into Lego, hoping to get picked up by the brand one day.
Very cool. Very cool.
You were always, I remember, like at Recon, your store on Eldridge. You had a little window, and you were always like in
I had
the window.
the G.I. Joe display.
That's right. You're always setting up like little like dioramas with like pictures, like doing interesting stuff. And I was like, that's so cool. But I'm like, he's like a big kid.
Yeah, he's
incredible.
He's a grown ass man. What is he doing?
But I always thought that was really interesting because I was like, okay, well, he's.
Well, a lot of that was me reliving, or not reliving, but like living the life I never lived as a kid. I never had Lego, never had G.I. Joes. I never had shit. So when I got older and I had some loot, I was throwing it at stuff like that rather than cars and fucking jewelry and, watches and shit. Like, I just move through stuff, time and space. I get inspired or excited by shit. I go way in too hard. And then I got to, I do the moonwalk to get the hell out. But the one thing I can say about collecting, I learned and I hated in the end. And I guess that's why I stopped. It's like, you're not satisfied with what you have. You're simply looking for what you don't. And there's no end. There's no winning that game, right? So at the end of the day, I was like, no, you know what? Like, and so many criticisms could be drawn there. All your materialism and oh my God, and this and hey, back to sustainable. Look at all the waste. In a way, the packaging, the this, the that, all that crap. So it doesn't make you feel great. And at that point, like I say, I just fell back and, there's too many excesses, obviously, in all of it. You
got to put it somewhere too.
You do. And storage adds up. It's not as expensive as weed, but it's costly.
Well, it used to be more expensive back in the day.
It used to be.
For good stuff, anyway. Well, right.
Not the shit I'm smoking.
Incredible. Is there anyone that wants to ask one more question?
No, there's not. Hey.
No. All right. We've taken a lot of this man's time. He's got
No. But I'm really excited, guys. Back to the sculpture and why they got me out here. I mean, that's the biggest shit I've ever not did. And because, once again, let's go back to all the assembly people and all my guys and gals, whoever, like I said, put this together, because it's remarkable. There's got to be 100 or so more. What's beautiful about this piece, unlike the figures that get sold and shit, whatever the merchandising element of what I do, which has a certain form, this is a polygon form, which is quite wonderful. I love it. It's just all like, it's 2001. It's very futuristic and shit. So just to say all the work they did, I'm so grateful. And we're going to see it. And the shit is dope. I mean, it's fucking dope. I'm so proud of it. And like I say, I feel bad because I've been an artist that I touch everything I do. I do my own work, okay? I'm not Jeff Koons. I'm not someone like fucking third partying my labor for. No, that's what? But you know what? Out here on this project, it's the way it had to be, right? I mean, like, I guess if there wasn't COVID, I could have come out and like picked up a bottle and like pushed a button. But these guys did it all. So let's remember that. And thanks for the credit, man. I'll fucking take it. It's like that $250. Oh no, that was $250,000. It's like that other painting. Like, I get the value of it, right? But what I want to define to you all, like, I'm not here to say, yo, look at my shit. Let's recognize the people who did it, and I'm so grateful. Thank you, everyone.